The call came at 6:52 a.m. on a Wednesday, just as the sky over Montreal was beginning to pale from charcoal to gray. I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with a chipped blue mug warming my hands, listening to the quiet hum of the radiator and watching frost creep along the window pane. The phone buzzed once, twice. My younger brother's name flashed on the screen. Mark. We hadn't spoken in nearly a month, not since our last uncomfortable visit to our mother's care facility, where words had felt heavy and forced. A knot tightened in my chest before I even answered. "Daniel?" Mark said when I picked up. His voice carried a strange calm, too measured, like someone delivering rehearsed lines. "I have some bad news." I straightened in my chair. "What is it?" "Mom passed away last night, peacefully, in her sleep." The mug slipped slightly in my grasp, hot coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "What?" My heart began to race. That can't be right. I was supposed to see her today." There was a pause, then Mark continued, his tone shifting, flattening. "The funeral is on Saturday. I've already arranged everything. And Daniel, the will is very clear. Everything goes to me. The house, the lake property, the savings, all of it. You're not mentioned. Don't waste time trying to challenge it." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection faintly visible on its dark screen. My mother was gone? Just like that? And the first thing my brother chose to tell me, before condolences, before details, was that I was getting nothing? Something wasn't right. Not emotionally wrong, but logically wrong. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 63 years old, a retired transportation planner who spent 4 decades working on municipal projects across Quebec. My wife, Laura, died 4 years ago after a long battle with leukemia. We had one son, Ethan, now 30, living in Halifax and working in environmental policy. After Laura passed, my mother became my anchor. Calling her every morning, visiting every weekend, it gave my days structure again. My brother Mark is 5 years younger than me. Growing up, we were inseparable, building snow forts in our backyard in Laval, racing bikes down the street until dusk. But adulthood changed us. Mark went into property development, chasing profits and opportunities. He married Linda, and together they had 3 children. From the outside, they looked successful, but I'd noticed the cracks. Projects that failed, loans that piled up, Linda taking extra shifts as a respiratory therapist. Our mother, Margaret Brooks, was 86, a former literature teacher with a razor-sharp wit. She lived alone in her townhouse until last winter. 9 months ago, Mark insisted she needed help. He pushed the idea of assisted living, then suggested he become her power of attorney temporarily, just to manage logistics. Mom was hesitant. She trusted us both, but Mark was persistent. Eventually, she agreed. Within weeks, everything changed. Mark called me one afternoon to say Mom had been diagnosed with advanced cognitive decline. Dementia, he said, severe and fast-moving. He'd already moved her to a facility called Riverside Haven. When I visited for the first time, I barely recognized her. She sat motionless in a recliner, eyes unfocused, words trailing into nothing. She didn't know my name. I asked her physician, Dr. Leonard Hayes, how this could have happened so quickly. He smiled politely and said cognitive deterioration can accelerate rapidly in elderly patients. I accepted it, but uneasily. I still visited Mom 3 times a week. Even when she stared through me like a stranger, I read to her, talked about Ethan, held her hand. Mark visited too, but rarely, and never for long. He always seemed in a hurry. Now, standing alone in my kitchen with that phone call echoing in my head, my unease sharpened into certainty. I dialed Riverside Haven. "I'm calling about my mother, Margaret Brooks," I said, when the receptionist answered. "I was just informed she passed away last night." There was a pause, keyboard clicks, then confusion. "I'm sorry, sir. Your mother is alive. She's in the dining room having breakfast." My legs nearly gave out. "Please," I said quietly, lowering my voice, "don't tell anyone I called, especially my brother." I hung up and immediately called Ethan. "Dad, it's early. What's going on?" "Your uncle said your grandmother died. She hasn't. She's alive." Silence. Then Ethan exhaled sharply. "Dad, that's serious. That's fraud. That could be elder abuse." "I know, and I don't think we have much time." By noon, I'd contacted an attorney I trusted, Michael Alvarez, someone I'd worked with years earlier. After listening to everything, he didn't hesitate. "Daniel, if what you're saying is true, your brother may be committing serious crimes, but we'll need proof." That same afternoon, I hired a private investigator, Rachel Moore. As she sat across from me at my dining table, pen poised over her notebook, she looked up and asked, "Before your brother took control, was your mother mentally competent?" I said, "She was volunteering, hosting book clubs, she was herself." Rachel nodded slowly. "Then let's find out what your brother has really been doing." That night, I drove through falling snow towards Riverside Haven, unaware that the truth waiting for me would be far more shocking than betrayal alone. Rachel called me early the next morning. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it that made my stomach tighten before she even finished her first sentence. "Daniel, I need you to listen carefully," she said. "Your brother hasn't just been managing your mother's affairs, he's been draining them." I sat down at the kitchen table, gripping the phone. "How bad is it?" "In the last 8 months, Mark has transferred just over $240,000 from your mother's personal accounts into one he controls. There are also withdrawals on her credit cards that don't match her spending habits. And the lake house, it was sold to a holding company 3 months ago. I'm still tracing ownership, but all signs point back to him." My chest felt tight. "And the doctor?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "Dr. Leonard Hayes and your brother went to university together. They've been close for decades." The pieces slammed together in my mind. The sudden diagnosis, the heavy medications, the vacant stare that had replaced my mother's sharp eyes. "So you're saying—" "I'm saying her condition may not be natural," Rachel finished. "If she's being over-medicated, that could explain everything." I thanked her, hung up, and stared out the window at the gray morning sky. Rage, fear, and guilt tangled together inside me. I should have pushed harder, asked more questions, trusted my instincts. That afternoon, I drove straight to Riverside Haven. Mom was sitting by the window in her room, hands folded in her lap. She looked frail, smaller than I remembered, but as I stepped closer, something struck me. Her eyes followed me, really followed me. "Hi, Mom," I said softly. She turned her head slowly. For a split second, there was something unmistakable there, recognition. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak. Then a nurse walked in to check her vitals, and the moment vanished. Mom's gaze dulled again, her shoulders slumping as if a switch had been flipped. I left with my heart pounding. 2 days later, Rachel called again. "There's more," she said. "Your brother has been pressuring the facility staff, insisting on handling all medications himself during visits. And Daniel, he's telling people your mother is dying, actively dying." My phone buzzed while she was still talking, an incoming call from Mark. I raised a hand as if Rachel could see me. "He's calling me right now." "Record it," she said instantly. "You're allowed." I answered, pressing the record button. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked. "You need to stop going to the home. You're upsetting Mom." "I told you, me, she was dead. Care to explain that?" A short laugh. "I misspoke. She had an episode. You know how these things are." "No, I don't, and neither do the doctors I've spoken to." There was a pause. When Mark spoke again, his voice was low, threatening. "You don't know what you're doing. Stay out of this." The call ended. That evening, I went back to Riverside Haven unannounced. When I reached Mom's room, it was empty. My heart dropped. "Where is she?" I demanded at the nurse's station. "Oh, your brother took her out for a drive. Said she needed fresh air." "When?" I asked, already backing toward the exit. "About an hour ago." I called Mark. No answer. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. 3 agonizing hours later, his car pulled into the lot. I watched from the hallway as he helped Mom out. She could barely stand, leaning heavily on him, her head lolling to one side. "You said she was dead," I said as he approached. My voice shook with fury. "You're being dramatic. What did you give her?" I demanded. "Mind your business," he said quietly. "I'm her power of attorney." I stayed until he left, until Mom was back in her chair. As I turned to go, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. "Hello?" I whispered. "Daniel?" a faint voice said. My breath caught. "Who is this?" "It's me," the voice said. "Your mother." My knees nearly buckled. "Mom? That's not possible." "Listen to me," she whispered urgently. "I don't have much time. Come back tonight, after 10. Make sure Mark isn't here, and don't tell anyone." The call cut off. I sat in my car long after, snow dusting the windshield, my mind reeling. None of this made sense, and yet deep down I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That voice had been hers. At 10:30 that night, I slipped back into Riverside Haven through the side entrance. The halls were quiet, dimly lit. When I opened Mom's room, she was sitting up in bed. She looked straight at me. "Close the door," she said clearly. Not confused, not distant. Clear. "Mom?" I whispered. She smiled, the same knowing smile from my childhood. "Sit down, Daniel. We have a lot to talk about." I closed the door with shaking hands and turned back to her, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "Mom, you're—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Perfectly sane," she said gently, "and I have been this whole time." I sank into the chair beside her bed, my legs weak. Up close, I could see it clearly now. Her eyes were sharp, focused, alive in a way they hadn't been for months. "The dementia," I whispered. "The doctor said—" "Was convenient," she interrupted, "for your brother." She reached under her pillow and pulled out a small voice recorder, then another and another. "I've been documenting everything. Dates, times, conversations. Every time Mark pressured me to sign something. Every time he raised his voice. Every time he thought I was too confused to understand." I stared at the devices, my mind spinning. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her expression softened. "Because I needed to know who you both really were when you thought I had nothing left to give. I needed to know who would stay." Tears burned my eyes. "I would have stayed no matter what." "I know," she said. "That's why this hurts. Not because of what Mark did, but because of who he chose to be." She explained everything then, how, before agreeing to the power of attorney, she'd quietly moved the bulk of her assets into a trust Mark couldn't touch, how she'd worked with her own lawyer, one Mark didn't know existed, how she'd exaggerated her confusion, played the part, endured being spoken about like furniture, all to see what her son would do. "And now?" I asked. "Now he thinks I'm dead," she said calmly, "and that gives us one chance to stop him." Over the next 2 days, everything moved quickly. Her lawyer coordinated with the authorities, hidden cameras were installed in her room with the cooperation of select staff, the recordings were secured off-site, and my mother, remarkable, unbreakable, continued her act. Mark visited twice. The first time he brought papers, deeds, transfers. His smile was strained as he tried to guide her hand. "Just sign here, Mom. It's to help you." She scribbled nonsense, pretending not to understand. His jaw tightened. The second time was worse. He came late when the halls were quiet. On the footage later, I watched him pull a syringe from his coat pocket. "This will help you sleep," he told her. She pretended to comply. Later testing confirmed what we feared. It was a massive dose of sedatives. "Tomorrow," he said softly as he left. Friday arrived. The funeral home was full. Flowers, music, a large framed photo of my mother smiling, vibrant, very much alive. Mark sat in the front row with his family, wearing the face of a grieving son. Relatives hugged me, offered condolences. I played my role, nodding silently. At precisely 2 o'clock, Mark stood and walked to the podium. He spoke beautifully about sacrifice, about duty, about how she trusted him with everything. That was when I stood. "Where's the body, Mark?" I asked. The room fell silent. He stared at me, eyes wide. "Sit down, you're making a scene." "I called the crematorium. They don't have her." Murmurs spread. His wife looked at him, confused, afraid. The doors at the back of the room opened. My mother walked in, supported by a walker, flanked by uniformed officers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone screamed. She stopped in front of Mark. "Hello, son," she said calmly. "I'm not dead." His face collapsed. "I reported everything, every lie, every theft, every attempt to drug me into silence." The officers stepped forward. Mark tried to run. He didn't make it far. The aftermath was brutal and swift. Charges, courtrooms, evidence laid bare. Mark pleaded guilty. Prison, restitution, a lifetime of consequences for choices made in greed. My mother moved into a small apartment near me. We rebuilt, slowly, carefully. She spoke publicly about elder abuse, helping others recognize the signs she'd lived through. One winter evening, we sat together watching snow fall softly outside. "You passed the test," she said quietly. I shook my head. "You never should have had to test us." She smiled sadly. "Maybe not, but now I know, and knowing saved my life." I took her hand, feeling its steady strength. Blood, I learned, doesn't make a family. Showing up does.